Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Chatting Category Romance. This is a channel that I've made with Sarah, the bookish knitter, where we talk about category romances, which are different from mainstream romances in that they have a supervening title, supervening theme, or page count. They're the kind of romances, what used to be called supermarket romances, that if you don't read romances, you'll probably be familiar with them. You'll probably consider them to be synonymous with the genre. They're not, though. They have more strictures placed on them, but they have lots and lots of joys, lots and lots of satisfactions that you can get out of them. So we've decided to just sort of read category romances for this channel, read and talk about them. I think the concentration will probably be on new releases. I know that Sarah reads a healthy amount of new releases from Harlequin category romances every month, and so do I. But when you're dealing with category romances that have been around forever, there have been hundreds of thousands of these things. You could fill a huge stadium with backlist copies of these things. You see them all the time at your used bookstore, unless your used bookstore, like my used bookstore, says no to all of them. Otherwise, out of fear of being swamped for them. So I have a lot of them. I have a lot of new ones. I have a lot of old ones. And I'm going to talk about an old one today from 1992. And one of the reasons why one of the melancholy aspects of talking about category romances that are long since out of print, a lot of times these things are not reprinted unless the author goes on to mainstream success. These things will often just languish in, five for a dollar used bookstores and never see the light of day again. Not only is that true and a little bit melancholy because there's a lot of stories out there, but also whole lines of category romances come and go. It's not just the books themselves. It's that a whole line, Harlequin may decide they have a line that has certain characteristics. Is it a supernatural romance line? Is it an older romance line where the protagonists are not very young people anymore? It could be a wide number of things, and that's what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with a category romance that I believe has been canceled, and that is Harlequin's Superromance line. See, you can see up there on top, Superromance. This is The Silence of Midnight by Karen Young. A fairly big novel. This is 300 pages. I have no idea. I love romance novels. I love reading them. I love talking about them, but I don't know them the way Sarah does. So she would probably know what the 500th is there. Maybe this is, maybe that's a reflection of this being number 500 of Superromance. It's certainly different from a lot of Harlequin category romances that I've read. I'm not all that up on super romances and what, for instance, their species characteristic was, so to speak. I mean, some of them have extra sizzle. Some categories have no sizzle at all. Some have a supernatural element. Some have a thriller element. Some have a religious element. I don't really know what the gimmick was with super romances, unless maybe it was their size, being longer than ordinarily romances are 150, 160 pages. This is twice that. But this is the story of a sheriff in Florida, Jake McAdams, and his wife Rachel, who's also had a long career in law enforcement and gave it up to be his wife and the mother of their son Scotty. But we don't get any of that. When this novel opens, these two have been married for a long time, and their marriage isn't idyllic by any means, and just recently it has received an unbelievable shock because Scotty has been kidnapped and there are no leads. Jake is the law enforcement officer for the county and has gotten nowhere in finding his own son. And it's rubbed tensions raw between the two of them. The book actually opens with a scene that quickly devolves into an argument. And there are many arguments. There's lots of tension here between the two of them. Sometimes that tension is very, very well done, to the point where there were long stretches in this book where I kind of forgot that I was reading a category romance. And at other times, bizarrely poorly done, almost as if this book had friends of Karen Young reading it with her while she was writing it, but no editor at Harlequin. Like, for instance, at the beginning of the novel, in an early argument scene, as Jake has to go to work. He has a job to do, and his son might be missing, and they're doing everything they can to find him, but he also has a job to do. And as he's on his way out the door, Rachel sort of sarcastically calls after him, "Oh, and while you're at it, try finding that son of ours." No human being on earth would say such a thing. And if someone would, they're the villain of the novel. That's a horrifying thing to say. I never got the clear impression from this book if we're supposed to like either of these people, which is kind of weird for a romance novel. Rachel is never likable. And Jake, well, you might think, all right, the mother is taking Scotty's disappearance really, really hard, and maybe she's taking some of that out on her husband. He's law enforcement. He's trying his hardest to find his young son. So maybe when you're groping your way in the first 50 pages of this book, maybe you're thinking, okay, so maybe I'm not supposed to like her. Maybe Jake is the one I'm supposed to like. A little bit odd for a romance novel, but it's been done. But then, no. Shortly after the book begins, Jake has a shock, another shock. A 14-year-old boy shows up at the police station, Michael, and claims that he is Jake's son from a one-night stand. A one-night stand 15 years ago. And there's a resemblance, a strong resemblance. Jake doesn't really spend much time doubting that Michael is his illegitimate son. And that, I was reading along, and any of you who follow Sarah's channel, and you should all subscribe to Sarah's channel, you will know that cheating in a romance novel is a big red flag for her. I don't know that it's an automatic DNF for her, but it has to be done well. And I think I would agree with her that, unfortunately, in romance novels, it's almost never done well. And boy, oh boy, is it not done well in this book. Oh my God. If she's not read this, I don't think she would get past. I don't think she would finish it. I think she would DNF this book. Because I don't think she'd get past the way that Karen Young decides to handle it in this book. Jake sits Rachel down and tells her something happened today. And she's automatically thinking, is it Scotty? But he says, no, actually, it's a teenage boy showed up at the station, and he claims that he's my illegitimate son, and I believe him. Remember that time when I was out of town 15 years ago, and you were worried because it was a really dangerous case? I think it was a Colombian drug dealer that he was chasing down. And she says, yes, I do remember that. I worried because you almost got killed. And Jake says, well, I didn't almost get killed, but I was unfaithful to you. And this boy is the result. And he has nowhere to live. He has nothing but the clothes he's standing up in. So I want to take him in. I want him to live in this house. And that scene and the one after it and the one after that are completely tone deaf. I mean, if her yelled out comment to him, oh, while you're at it, how about you find that missing son of ours? If that comment was monstrous, then so are his comments to her about this grown-up teenage love child who's suddenly living in the house in the room where her still missing young son used to live. When Jake confronts Rachel with all of that, he basically takes the tone of a high school track coach. He starts to basically tell her, just walk it off. I'm the bill payer here, and he's my illegitimate son. Now, I think he's going to turn out just fine. It's just there's a plot here. Obviously, there are a few plots here. There's a very detailed and nuanced study of a marriage in complete unthinkable chaos. Karen Young does a really good job with that. The scenes that aren't weirdly, alienly tone deaf are well done. And there is a complex portrait of Rachel here. I don't know that Jake's portrait is all that complex. There's a complex portrait of Rachel here. It's never attractive. It is complex. I never wanted to stop reading. But by far the most attractive character in the book is Michael, who is as clueless as an abandoned dog. He just wants people to like him. He just wants to belong in this household. And he gets a plot line of his own, because it turns out that, well, I don't want to spoil the last half of the book, but it turns out that Scotty's kidnapping may not have been an isolated incident. It might be that the person who kidnapped Scotty Uh, is it because I'm mentioning Scotties? They are also adorable, but they're not as adorable as you are. You want to come down here and do some Frieda yoga? Oh, you do. Oh, 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 oh. I'll note that in the title. uh, you feel for Michael, and you kind of wish that you had more of his story, but he gets a story of his own because, well, Scotty is not the only person who gets kidnapped in the course of this book, and you can guess. Again, this is not a big deal. This is not a deal breaker, especially with category romances. But you can guess right at the beginning of this book pretty much exactly how it's going to end. Every aspect of the three separate plot lines, you can pretty much guess how they're going to end. Karen Young does not have any narrative surprises for you in that regard. But I liked it. I thought it had a lot more narrative meat on its bones than a lot of category romances do today. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of explicit sexual stuff in here. There's a lot of very unromantic stuff, just ugly stuff in here. Not just in terms of investigating a kidnapping or two, but also in terms of how ugly a marriage can get. That I don't see much of that in contemporary category romances. Maybe I'm just missing it, but maybe that was the specialty of super romances. But I did enjoy this, definitely. Not enough to keep it, but I did enjoy it. It's just, it was strange to read a Harlequin romance where I enjoyed the book but didn't like either the hero or the heroine. That was weird. I ended up liking all the supporting characters far better. So, but anyway, that is your category romance for today. I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.